We did open it up for your questions when we had the registration page up, and the number one thing that people seemed to ask about were topics centered around social media. So that's what we want to touch on first, tell you about what we see happening in social media and what you might want to incorporate into your strategy next year.
Sounds good. Thanks, Anne. And, with social media, we have this up here, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And that's just really because there's two main things that we see with social. Content and trying new approaches is going to remain key, but there are some new ways that you can do this. One thing that we're seeing as a big trend that I'm sure everyone has heard of, but the idea of influencer marketing, and that's going to look different regardless of what industry or subset you work in. Influencer marketing does not have to just be like the pretty girl on Instagram who's selling like the latest purse or handbag. If you can find some of those key people who follow you, who have big followings, who your communities respect, finding ways to partner with them, sharing content together. That might be running a contest or a promotion, having them share a blog post, sharing anything about an event you have coming up. We are seeing those work really well. It's getting harder and harder to execute well in paid media. And so when it comes to influencer marketing, it's a great way to just really be authentic with your audience and, again, spread your message. We're also going to talk about video a little bit later, so I'll save that one, but video is becoming huge with social. When it comes to any of your content, if there are more ways you can incorporate video, just do it. And again, I'll table that a little bit for later on. One thing we're seeing too is social ads are just going to continue to get more and more expensive, especially if you're advertising on LinkedIn. You've probably noticed it. I think most of this audience is probably more familiar with Facebook, but definitely correct me if you guys are interested in any other platforms. They're going to get more expensive on those bigger networks. They can charge more. You've also probably seen in the news it's becoming more strict on data privacy and regulation. So you can't target quite as maybe detailed as you used to in the past. So that might be something that you notice too. So you're going to have to keep experimenting with what works well for your audiences. We always recommend to just test. Run some campaigns, leave them up for a good amount of time. That can be anywhere, would you say, Anne, maybe 2 weeks to a month? And then just really iterate on those. Another thing too, so the more they change, the more they stay the same. When we talk about changes, we did want to mention some things that you can think outside the box to help stretch that ad budget. So influencer marketing was one of those. Another one is, you've probably seen Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. These platforms are always experimenting with new features. So, Facebook launched Live like a long time ago. Instagram launched IGTV as well. Whatever those new products are going to be in 2020, definitely try them out. They're going to reward your content on those features. You're going to see it do a little bit better than you might, on the traditional just post or sharing a photo, that sort of thing. And that's really because they want people to embrace that new product. They want to see if it works well. So that can be a really easy, free, low-cost way to get your content amplified. Another thing we wanted to mention, and we've mentioned this in other kind of events like this before, but groups are just going to continue to get bigger for 2020. There will probably also be some products or options for businesses to even advertise within those groups. So just keep an eye out, whatever groups make sense for your business, your nonprofit, your event. Try to get in those groups, share that content, engage with those people. Those updates will show up in the news feed too, and they'll get a little more priority than just post from a branded page.
I just want to make a quick comment on groups. As a marketer and somebody who's trying to generate business through social media, I will say that groups are the number one way that we have gotten leads through social media. I'm a member of several industry groups and groups of people that have marketing directors in them. And so what they'll do is they'll go on there and ask questions, similar to like what you guys might be asking here today, or like really specific questions like, hey, I need a software tool that posts out to all these different social networks. Which one should I use? And so you can leverage that to be really helpful and answer those questions. Give them referrals to other people if maybe you're not the best fit for that situation. But from that, every now and then we'll get somebody that's like, hey, I want to talk to you a little bit more about this, and it could lead into something bigger. So just identify where your target audience is on Facebook, and like Gretchen said, try to join up in those groups. And, from there, don't sell people. I mean, that's a quick way to get banned or kicked out, but just try to help people as much as possible, and eventually, the good stuff will come from that. So.
No, thanks for mentioning that, Anne. And, one other thing with groups too, it's not necessarily fit for every business, but it could also make sense for you to build your own group, whether it's for your business or your industry association. So think about that as well. That will definitely take more time. You're not going to see a huge number of followers or engagement in the beginning, but it can definitely be something that's worth pursuing, just as groups are going to continue to be rewarded more. Before we kind of keep going with social media and move into another trend, I think I'll pause for a minute just to see if there are any questions or comments from the group. Okay, great. So one other trend we see for 2020, and we do quickly want to clarify, these are not ranked in any way. It's just the trends that we see. We hosted an event about conversational marketing over the summer, and that one just ties in nicely with social media, and we wanted to make sure that we highlighted it. That will continue to be huge for 2020. As we just talked about, right, social is getting more and more saturated, and so those one-to-one relationships are going to continue to become more important. So those are things like Facebook Messenger, Instagram, direct message, WhatsApp, basically any messaging platform that's even having a chat bot on your website or live chat on your website. Just think about the way that you browse the internet, that you shop, that you talk with your friends. You're doing it across a ton of different platforms now, maybe even in one day. And when you want an answer to something, you want it right away. So it's really easy to just chat that page. Even if you own something like a boutique or a store, maybe you're not quite ready for an online web store, but you could consider selling over Instagram. And that's just as simple as posting your product, telling people they can message you for pricing or sell your product that way.
One thing that Facebook is coming out with, I don't know if they've already come out with it, but I saw one of the head Facebook people at a talk a couple months ago, and one of the things they are coming out with is e-commerce through Facebook, which is going to be huge. And if you're at all selling any product, even if you're a restaurant, you don't sell food, but you could still sell T-shirts and some things like that. You can do it through Facebook, and so that's something you definitely want to have on your radar and be researching, especially in its infancy. You can be an early adopter of it.
Definitely. Thanks, John. So yeah, an easy way to get started with conversational marketing, if you have a Facebook page, would just be to make sure you have your bot ready. Maybe you have some welcome messages set up when somebody comes on your page, or at the very least, you're at least checking your messages. Make sure if people are able to message your page, you're checking and getting back to them. If not as quickly as possible, by the next day is generally good. Go ahead, Kyle. Oh, okay. Great. And then one last thing with conversational marketing too is just think about how well it works with customer service or ticket desks. So if you do have a service-based business or any sort of questions you want to answer people, that's a great way to use a ticketing environment without having to really invest heavily in a software sort of tool. Great. I will pass it over to Anne.
Is it my turn next? Yes. All right. What are we talking about next? Search. Cool. Okay. So search engine optimization is a huge topic, and I'm not going to try to cover everything about it or everything that I see happening in 2020 with search. But a couple of things I do want to talk about. One is the zero place search result. Has anybody heard of that? The zero place? Okay, Dusty, good job. You get a star. So what I mean by the zero place search result is when you search for a topic in Google, of course, you'll get a series of links that go out to different websites that, answer the question that you're coming to Google for. But what you might have seen sometimes when you search, especially for a specific question, the example I was looking at today that I saw in an article was like how to meditate in 5 minutes or less. There's like a little snippet of an article that shows up on the actual Google result page. So you don't have to click into a website. It just gives you the quick answer. And, if you want more information, the link is right there. You can click into the article. But what they're trying to do is show you what they call the featured snippet. And that is, basically the answer to the question. So, you might be wondering, okay, well, how do I get there? So what you want to do in that type of situation is, first of all, you'll want to phrase the title of your page. So whatever question you're trying to answer, you want to phrase the title of your page as the question that somebody would type into Google. So that's pretty simple, but might not think of that right off the bat. And then of course after that you want to answer the question as clearly and concisely as possible. Use bullet points whenever you can, and just of course make sure that you have the best answer to that question. A couple other things to look for there. You'll want to do or target what we call a long tail keyword. So it's something, not as simple as, let's say book reviews. It's not that simple. It's maybe what are the best books of 2019 that I should read, over the holidays. Like something like that would be an example of a long tail keyword. So that's something that will be trending in Google search. Really what Google is trying to do is keep your eyes on Google as long as possible, keep your eyes on the Google search results pages without you going off to other websites. So either way, they're getting your information in front of them. So it's a win-win for both sides. Sort of speaking hand in hand with that Google zero search result topic is the topic of your Google listing. So if you guys are involved in a local business and you do not have a Google listing that's verified that you can manage, that is the first thing that you should do when you leave today, because it can be a very powerful marketing tool for you guys. You'll want to make sure that that listing is filled out as much as possible, so your contact information is correct, your hours. You can upload photos, you can upload your logo. And then after that point, once you have your listing filled out really well, you'll want to make sure that you get as many positive reviews as you can. Because again, when people are searching for local businesses, they will go to the one that comes up first, and usually the one that comes up first is the one that has the most positive reviews. Legitimate positive reviews. Let me stress that. You can't go hire people from Russia to leave you fake reviews. It might work for a little while, but you'll get caught in the long run. So those are a couple of topics I wanted to mention on search. What else? Voice search is going to become bigger and bigger. So I think John's going to talk a little bit about ADA compliance in a little while. So just making sure that your content is compatible with screen readers and just accessible to where Google can search it and provide results based on voice-based search. So yeah, I think that's what I wanted to talk about with search. What's next? All right, I'll hand it to you guys.
All right, so yeah, video is, it's here to stay for sure. It's a powerful tool. It's probably it's the king of engagement, really. And I say that because, as far as human senses go, we like motion and we like to hear things, and that captures both. And also, as far as video goes, it can incorporate all other mediums that they can't do. So you can put text in your video, you can do graphics, photos, music. So it really, you get the most bang for your buck when you use video. Is the people here, do you guys incorporate video at all in your business? Yeah? Okay. So I want to talk about video strategy, and that is, so we filmed for Next Step. We filmed a culture video for them, and it wasn't just, hey, we filmed this and we put it on YouTube. We filmed it, we had a strategy behind that where you incorporate it on all social media platforms, and you usually edit it a different way for the platform. You don't just share like a YouTube link on your Facebook page. You upload from Facebook. And when John mentioned Facebook e-commerce, they have Facebook Watch. I'm not sure if you people are familiar with that, but that's like their way to fight against YouTube.
I think just being intentional on all of those fronts, you know, like you said, whenever you create the video, I think that starts in the very beginning of the project, right? So as you're fleshing out your storyboards and things like that, you know, being the intentionality side of it, where you're saying, all right, this is what we're trying to accomplish overall with the video, but beyond that, how do we, you know, push it to these platforms in different ways and hit this target, you know, because your demographic on Facebook is going to be probably a little bit different than your demographic on Instagram, which then your video might serve a completely different purpose on your website, right? So all three, and the list goes on and on. There's a lot more than just those three aspects, but you know, just being intentional early on and kind of mapping that out before you get started, rather than, oh hey, yeah, now we got this video, what do we do with it? I think that's a very, you know, important thing to consider to get started. So
For sure. And we have that Next Step video that we can show real quick and talk about how we used it.
yeah, so before we get started, this kind of will segue into something else I was going to talk about in just a second, but from a creative perspective, I think something to consider, and with all of your branding and anything that you push out, right? Anything that you're pushing to your target is super important that it's consistent, right? So that goes beyond, like, whenever I say brand, what do you guys think of? Like your branding, what is the first thing? Reputation, that's an excellent answer. Anybody else? You guys are all like marketers and stuff, so yeah, you guys are gonna have the right answers, right? Most people are like, yeah, your logo. Like that's what is directly correlated in a lot of people's minds and directly associated with a brand. And now that is tremendous, right? There's incredible value, recognition, and stuff in a logo. But your logo is only a piece of the entirety of your brand. And so your personality, your tone, and your voice are all very crucial in, you know, how you communicate your brand to, is how it's outward facing, right? How you are pushing that to the masses. And so with this video, I think that's one thing that Greg did a great job of, is kind of encapsulating the tone and the feel. I know, you know, you refer to it as kind of a culture video, but I mean, it's all about sales, right? I mean, that's really what this video kind of comes down to, is, you know, how to get those potential prospective clients to engage with. And there's a big emotional aspect of that as well. So the voice and the tone and who Next Step is kind of, I think Greg did a great job capturing that in this video. But that was just kind of again, wanted to touch on that before you watch it. But go ahead, Gretch. You clicked the wrong thing? Yeah. No, that's the right thing. Do we have volume on there?
It's muted on the bottom left.
You can full screen it too. Or on the video, not there. No.
I think you can hit the F key to make it full screen.
Since 2002,
That guy.
Next Step Technology Services has delivered an uncommon.
Well, okay.
We really did plan all this. It's anticipation we're trying to build.
Businesses in our region. Through the years, our range of services has evolved and changed with the times. But our commitment to delivering quality results for our clients is not wavering. Our team members carry themselves as professionals, humbled to serve our partners day in and day out. That's just how we do things at Next Step. We believe that giving people the right tools and support is the best way to help them do their jobs. Best-in-class hardware and software, strong security, and guaranteed response times are just a few ways we do that. We take things a step further by serving as a proactive business partner. What we want for ourselves is the same thing we want for our clients, to build a great company. In today's environment where competition is fierce and security breaches happen daily, good is no longer good enough. We strive for greatness. It's what we've always done, and it's what we always will do.
Yeah, and so we use that video throughout their website. We captured stills from it to use on their website. We used it on their Facebook cover page. And then we also used the brochure to send potential clients.
Sure. I would pass this out, but I'm afraid it would just start playing the whole time. So this is pretty cool. It's like a little mailer we can send out to clients, and you open it up and you can have it set to where it automatically plays the video for you. So,
How expensive are those?
Depends on the quantity.
yeah.
I mean, but really, they're straight from like Shenzhen, China. That's how the price gets even remotely affordable.
Or bring it to a meeting, that way you don't have to, what just happened there, you can just already play it.
Yeah, because it's preloaded on there, so you don't have to worry about buffering. But yeah, I would definitely use these like as a sales tool to bring into a meeting or something like that. So it'll talk to you. I think they were like $30 a piece when it came down to it, but we ordered a pretty large quantity of them too. So
Yeah. Oh, I think again that goes.
yeah.
And as far as video type, just cutting edge video type, I would say 360 video, VR video. Because Apple, I think you were telling me, Apple's going all in on Apple eyeglasses. So once they go into something, then usually everybody else follows.
Yeah, Apple is. Mine. That's okay. Maybe.
There you go.
It's gonna mess up the recording stuff. Yeah. So Apple, I don't know if you guys seen it, but projections from internal stuff at Apple, they say within the next 3 years, they're hoping to move away from these guys, physical phones, and like Greg said, they're going all in with the wearables. Yeah. So the like glasses. I know Google Glass didn't really work out so well, but I think maybe it's like a pride thing. They're going to go in and try to show them how it's done or something. But we'll see how it turns out. It's kind of crazy to think about, right? That's a big transition. Like, I don't think I like it, and stuff. But, stuff changes. So,
Yeah, I guess. Do we have any questions about video? Go ahead.
I'm trying to get into more videos in my position, but do y'all have any recommendations of software to edit that would either be, if not free, like still affordable?
So what type of operating system do you use? Like on your computer? Are you on a Mac or a PC? PC? Gotcha.
So like, do you have the Adobe Suite at all? Do you use Adobe? Okay. So I know they have the cloud. If you guys have the cloud subscription, it comes with that editing software, and I think I want to say that's $60 a month. A lot of programs do go to the cloud now. As far as free programs, I could send you a list, because
And it depends on the type of video as well. For sales videos that are kind of like the one-on-one through email and even just little things, we highly value video. If you go to our website now, we just, I guess, kind of refaced it not too long ago. But there is a video on every single page for every service, for every opportunity. I mean, even down at the contact opportunity that's at the bottom on that call to action, there's a big video of Ann on every page that this just explains, hey, this is what happens next, right? So we really kind of buy into that video. People are much more keen to watch a 2-minute video than they are read a 4-sentence paragraph of text. It's just kind of where we are in our culture, and it's so readily available. It's more engaging. There's emotion there. So everything from product videos to one-on-one sales videos to really overview corporate culture videos, we're all about all of that stuff. But to answer your question on types and software, there is Wistia, if you're familiar with them. They are a video hosting third-party platform software, and one of the applications, I guess, that they offer is something called Soapbox, and so we use that. We've kind of got a little rig we use in the office for like our one-on-one prospecting emails and things like that. It's got a little light, high-definition camera. You don't have to use those, but it plugs right into your computer, and then it's got a very, we say, like high-level, superficial version of being able to edit those videos and cut and splice and try, and so depending on what you're trying to accomplish, that's great for at least the sales side of it. But to accomplish some of the other stuff that we're talking about, like Greg said, Premiere or something like that might be a good option.
I'll add to that. One thing that I don't want to see happen to y'all is getting like I guess the equivalent of analysis paralysis, just getting paralyzed thinking you have to make this big production. I mean, if you think about it, when you're on social media and some of the videos that we're watching, it's just people holding out their arm, talking into it, giving their thoughts. So don't, I guess, fall into the trap of thinking it has to be a big production every time. Yes, I mean, if you have the strategy behind it to have a big production like the one we just showed you, that's great. But you can meet your customers where they're at just talking in front of a camera. Those are most of the videos on our website, is us talking to a camera, either giving advice. You have to ask yourself the question, what's going to make them pause on social media and watch this video? It's got to be full of good content, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a big production. So
yeah, I think there's a time and a place for that strategy for both, like John said. And yeah, everything doesn't, I mean, we on our videos, if you do go to our website, you'll see there is a production value to those. Yeah. But part of that's because of who we are as a marketing agency that sells video packages. We kind of want our videos to look, you know what I mean? They got to have kind of a certain flair to them or whatever, but
even like earlier, we just did a Facebook Live, and we'll post videos on Facebook that's like just me and Gretchen on our phone. And I'm sure Greg loves it, but that's what we do because it's just, it's easy and it's quick and it's a way to, like John said, meet people where they are. So yeah, don't stress too much about the production value, especially with the one-to-one and social media videos.
So I'm curious about how often you have to update or make a new video. If your product isn't changing much, is there a standard rule, or how long will y'all use this video is what I'm asking.
The next set of videos?
Right.
That's a good question.
I think it's going to be case by case, right? So, I mean, because it's like an overview, like corporate culture video is what we kind of call that. The theme there is to evoke emotion, and it's to really talk about, I mean, there's a lot of evergreen, I guess, phrases in there. It's what we have done and what we always will do. So it's kind of speaking to, this past and where we've come from, and, there's this indefinite, what we always will do. So it's not themed out, kind of timestamp. One thing that you probably should consider with video, just like any type of, if you ever bring a photographer in, for your branding purposes, for your website and stuff, just things to consider there are employees. So like if your retention is low, something to consider, you just tell them what it is. You don't
just have the owners of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's things to consider there, because that is a way to not be able to evergreen product. You don't necessarily have a video that is a year old that 80% of the people that you framed.
Yeah, we met with somebody not too long ago, and they showed us some really great video that they had done about a year ago, and they can't use it because one of the main people talking in it is no longer there.
And working at a direct competitor.
I think one thing too, everyone probably came here like Ascend's going to help us see into the future of 2020, and that's not necessarily with video, we're talking about a lot of different things. I think a main takeaway too is just, if you haven't already started, get started in 2020. And that can look like something Greg and Steven have talked about, or it can look like what John has talked about. And I think too, another way is we, mentioned with your strategy for your video, all the things that you're already doing, say it's an email, a blog post, social posts, think about how you can create that as a video instead. Like Gabby, it can be really simple. Maybe you guys do, blog posts on like common questions about, is it elder law? Mm-hmm. Right. Maybe instead that's just you and your coworker answering a quick question, and you guys post that, on the blog, you share that on your social media, and that actually would be faster than writing it out. And you've got your content right there. So I think the main takeaway, for 2020 is just make sure you're getting started with video, and it can look like whatever level, with the equipment you have available to you.
And to piggyback on what Gretchen said, so a lot of people, myself included, when you're first starting out, you feel extremely uncomfortable being on video. And I promise you, it gets easier and easier with every video that you do. You'll get more and more comfortable in front of the camera, and you'll be able to talk more freely. It's just something you have to do a few times. Just because it's, not something that you're good at today, or you don't enjoy doing it today, doesn't mean that you can't get better at it. So I wouldn't let that discourage you, into thinking, well, I'm not good at video, I'm not going to do it, I don't want to do it. You will get better at it, because we've had people in our office who I've just seen tremendous improvement on, from when they started out, and from where they are now. So yeah, definitely just take that first step. It is the hardest step, is to put yourself out there, but once you do, it gets easier and easier.
Steven, you're up.
All right.
Yeah, well, I've already talked about this a lot, just how crucial your branding is from a consistency standpoint, and kind of going back into that personality just to reiterate a few things. But making sure that your voice is what it needs to be, right? So I guess comparing and contrasting Next Steps video that you guys just saw, what emotions would you say were involved in that? Like what emotions were evoked? What would you say?
They're consistent, they're dedicated to what they do. So
Okay.
you're going to feel like you're going to get the same experience, or everyone's going to get the same type of experience.
Okay, all right. What types of maybe feelings do you get? Maybe is the right word. So like, was it more serious, or was it more like comical and humorous? Would you say? It's definitely more serious, right? So, what's that?
Coming into work, unlocking the door every day, that's like, they're down home, they're not relatable.
Sure. Sure, it's kind of a nod to, like you said, that consistency. It's very serious. And granted, that's kind of what they do, right? They're a technology firm that focuses on security. I mean, that's trust. Those things have to be established. And not that trust can't be, conveyed in a way that's, humorous and stuff like that. But comparing that to kind of how we brand ourselves, we have kind of a mix, right? Like if you go to our website right now, for instance, we have several little Easter egg links throughout the site. One of them links to a light box of Warren Haynes. If you guys don't know who that is, you can leave now. But he is one of the best guitarists of all time. Played for Allman Brothers, etc. We can talk about him later. But a little video of him like shredding it out on a video of him playing Soulshine. There's a link to a Doc Holliday reference in Tombstone. Like there's just funny little GIFs and things like that. Yeah, they're Easter eggs. You got to go look more for them. They're just kind of stuck in there and hidden. But those things work for us, but they would not work for Next Step, right? And so making sure that that's consistent across the board, whether it's on your website or your social media presence and everything like that. One thing that I see happen so often is, maybe someone like what you're talking about, like that needs to really push that trust and really push that that consistency and stuff. They go down this humorous path, and that's okay, but sometimes you can go off on tangents with it, and it becomes almost just inappropriate and inconsistent for the brand as a whole. So just as your logo needs to be consistent across the board on every medium, I think your tone and how you speak, how you phrase things, how you answer people on conversational perspectives, everything needs to be really consistent there, and I think that's part of that crucial side of it. So.
I think one thing too, Stephen, we were maybe gonna mention is, too, the branding, right, Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's how people feel. So everyone at your company is responsible for that. So we were talking about conversational marketing earlier. Your support person or whoever's answering those questions, this is kind of more of just a concrete point. They need to know, what does that voice look like? How quickly do they reply? Do they have all the information they need? And whatever that looks like across all the touch points for your, customers or your donors is something that, you need to take into account.
Yeah, we do workshops with different companies, and one of the things that we do is a very surface level kind of dive in with their stakeholders, with kind of their upper level into that brand, overall branding perspective. And it's really interesting. We work with some big companies that even within their kind of upper echelon of their organization, they don't all have 100% consistent views on who they are as a company. So we kind of have this little worksheet that we put out, and basically they rate these different things. You guys have seen them, like where it's 1 through 5, and 1 would be like if you feel like you're more serious, and then a 5 if you're more humorous, right? And so there's all these different things, and you kind of rate them on a 1 to 5, and you're kind of wanting everybody to not necessarily have all 3s, but be at least consistent, right? Like where everybody in your leadership is answering all 1s for the we're serious. But we see lots of inconsistencies there, and I feel like that's so important overall, is having not just your leadership, but to Gretchen's point, if you've got somebody on social media that's answering out, on Twitter, through bots or through chat on your website and stuff, those answers need to be, consistent. Do y'all keep up with like the Wendy's Twitter and stuff like that? Okay, so that works for them, right? But then it's always awkward when you see somebody try to jump into that conversation that maybe either doesn't fit their brand or they don't really know what they're doing there to start with. How far can they go? Because Wendy's will take it to the max, right? So Wendy's and Netflix can just go back and forth all day, but there's like Chick-fil-A probably ain't gonna go quite that far, right? So those are just examples of that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and I'll probably let John and Stephen piggyback on this one a little bit too, but talking about personalization. So there are some restrictions in place now in terms of privacy, as there probably should be. I think things maybe went a little bit too far in terms of Facebook listening to us while we're not in the app and things like that. But for marketers, there's still a lot of opportunities to use personalization in an ethical way, and I think that's something that will become more and more leveraged next year and beyond. And when I say personalization, it really covers a lot of different things. One really simple example is when you get an email and it says, Dear Gabby or Dear Claire, it has your first name in there. That's an example of personalization. More on, I guess, the more sophisticated end of things. Another example is when Amazon can display to you items that you should purchase based off of your previous purchase history. So they know you so well, they know your buying behavior so well, they know exactly what you want to buy next. So there is sort of, the simple end and then the more sophisticated end, and then there's lots of ways that you can incorporate personalization in between. It fits in really well with conversational marketing, so people are looking more and more for that one-on-one experience, even if part of it is automated, that's fine. They just want to get the specific answers that they're looking for. So being able to provide them with the specific product that they're looking for, or the answer to the question that they're looking for, that personalized experience is going to become more and more important in the future. So, yeah.
And, one thing too is it's about using the information you have. So the information you have about your contacts, your customers, name, like Ann mentioned, is kind of the low-level hanging fruit, I guess is the expression, right? But think about too, maybe you have, this many people who fit audience A, this who fit audience B, and you're not necessarily going to send them each something individually. You want to send, an email out about an event coming up. Maybe your email looks different for the people who have been to your events before than for the people who haven't been before. So that's kind of a way to help break it down. Or maybe it's like, you're reminding them, here's the menu item that you've ordered, the most in the past couple months. You've got a coupon to come back to the restaurant and try it out. So kind of different ways for personalization. It's just about using the information you have to stay engaged, with your customers.
And that plays into websites as well. So we got another one. So we build websites on a platform called HubSpot, and that allows us to produce what we call smart content, or I guess what they call it, so consequently we call it that. But the content, basically you think about a website and as it exists in rows, right? If you guys have experience with that, you can change different rows or modules, aspects of the website to appear differently to different people as they visit based on, to Gretchen's point, what information you have on them, how many times they've been to the site, how far they have gone through that, I guess through your funnel, right, to becoming a paying, delighted customer. From that, I guess those kind of examples down to what industry they're in. So you can have industry specific information after you've gathered that information from them. And it's just a way to be more relatable to them, right? Like if you offer especially a lot of different services to a lot of different types of people and maybe different personas, to really hone in on who that is right when they first come to your site is super important. It's kind of like, the way I like to think about it is going into a coffee shop. There's something about walking into a coffee shop where they say, hey, Steven, you're getting your usual? Yeah, we'll have it ready for you in just a second. And they know who I am, they know what I want, they know the expectations that I have. Like there's a trust that's already established with them, versus maybe going to a Starbucks somewhere on I-75 where I am having to wait in line, go through the order, kind of figure out what I want because Starbucks isn't a good example, but I've never seen their menu before, you get what I'm saying? So there's just, as they move through that funnel and that process, having content that speaks specifically to who they are and how they have been interacting and how you want them to interact with your company. So.
All right. I will. Well, first of all, how many of y'all have websites or work at a business that has a website? Okay, everybody, good. How many of them? If you're a B2C company, raise your hand. Mainly B2B, business to customer, consumer, like a restaurant would be B2C. Okay. Well, this is especially true if you're not primarily business to business, but you're going straight to the consumer. One thing you want to be prepared for in 2020, and it's kind of already here, but is having a mobile-first website. I think about 3 years ago, we had a B2C company, and I looked at the mobile traffic, and it was about split in half, 50-50, 50% on a desktop or larger device, and 50% on mobile. And I looked at it this year, and I just kind of expected a jump, maybe 60% in mobile, because that was about 3 years ago that I looked. And it was 75% mobile traffic. And so much of the process when we as a business will get a website redesign or a new website, we kind of keep them up to date every 2 or 3 years. That's the lifespan of a website. When we get those, the mock-ups, or we go shopping around for a website, we'll get the company to send us an image or a picture or a mock-up of the desktop. And because we're a business and we're usually on our desktops all day, that's kind of all we think about. That's all we think about because we're not in the mindset of the consumer. Well, the consumer, like the data shows, is on their phone. So one thing in 2020, or whenever you get a new website in the future, is to ask for that mobile-first design. Kind of just don't fall into the trap of seeing the website design on a desktop and then thinking mobile's an afterthought. Especially if you're going straight to the consumer, it's the first thing you need to think about and how to convert on that. So that would say for 2020, that's probably the most important piece of advice I can give you. A lot of the times, you know, the business jargon we'll hear websites need to be responsive. Well, no, in 2020, they need to be mobile first. So that's probably the most valuable piece of advice I can give you. Now, the second thing that's going to be big in 2020 is ADA compliance. And that's having a website that's accessible to people with disabilities. There was some stuff kind of stirring around in the news, like I think it was Domino's that got sued by a disabled customer. And in that lawsuit, I think the customer won a substantial amount of money because they couldn't order it on the website. And, you know, as small businesses, that's going to start trickling down and be something that we need to worry about or be concerned about or at least have on our radar. Because something like that could make or break, you know, people like us. Domino's, it might not affect them that much. But that's one thing that we've been keeping on the radar and really pouring a lot of resources into is having websites that are ADA compliant. And also, Google is rewarding websites like that too, so it's going to help with your SEO. These companies, these big tech companies that have a stake in it, that want to kind of steer the industry, they're going to do all they can to reward good behavior. I think Greg mentioned earlier, like, or I think Apple, you know, wanting to steer people into the glasses, they're going to reward VR video. Facebook, they own some VR and AR companies. So if you have 360-degree video, they're going to promote that in their algorithm. It's kind of the same thing with ADA compliance. It's going to help your SEO. Another thing is security. So we've seen a lot of attacks on websites lately, and a big thing is, I don't know, one mistake I see is small companies thinking it can't happen to me. It's secure, or it's such a big task that you kind of want to kick the can down the road. And security on the back end of the website can be expensive. If you're handling customer data, that's something you're going to want to pour some resources into and be willing to pay money on. I don't know where all of you are in your business, you know, if you're handling a lot of sensitive client data or not, but if you are, that's something you definitely want to pour some resources into for 2020. Anybody else have anything to add? Or?
Like GDPR.
Okay, so yeah, GDPR, that was big in Europe. Have a lot of you visited websites and seen the little thing that pops up at the bottom? It says, we use cookies. And okay, so one thing that that I guess will be relevant to us, it happened in Europe, it's probably going to happen here eventually, and it's a good thing. It's general data privacy regulations. So I mean, as a consumer, I don't want my business, or I don't want businesses selling my information. I want them to respect my privacy. And so it's a good thing, but it's also going to be a costly implementation, especially for smaller businesses, again, keeping up with these regulations. So staying ahead of the game in 2020 and kind of prepping and looking into companies that can be GDPR compliant and knowing when to pull that trigger for your company is going to be a good thing. Anybody have any questions? Yeah.
What would an ADA compliant website look like?
Yeah, so it's creating a website that will be easily navigable by screen readers and by people with disabilities. So they're using certain software programs like JAWS or certain things like that to go through a website. If I'm visually impaired, I still have a screen reader reading it out towards me. Now, you have to code that website in a way that, works with those programs. And that's where, I guess the big source of friction comes in. It costs more money to do that.
There are some things that are simple aesthetic differences, right? And John can speak more to this, but like if you have a button, that's a call to action, right? The color of your button and then the text that is on that button, there has to be a certain level of contrast between the color of the text and the button behind it. And they have these algorithms and stuff that you kind of can play with your colors, and it'll tell you like it has to pass, is it 60? It's got to get a certain
ratio, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a ratio or score that they present to you after you present your colors there. It's not always what you would think of. There's a lot of kind of back and forth on that, honestly, right now, because some designers are like, there's plenty of contrast between these two colors, but the consistent system that they're using to grade might pop back and say, actually, no, it doesn't quite qualify for being ADA compliant. And so constantly change because, again, it can impact.
And the web is kind of transitioning out of this wild, wild west into something that's more orderly and more regulated. And with that comes growing pains for businesses like us. So it's important to know how those transitions are affecting you, or at least be paying a company that knows, if you don't want to keep up with that headache. So.